everything we do is already doomed. That is Shuddha Dukkha. That is that, you see, but it's now Tantric perspective here. And understanding of that experience, also every arousal has the culmination in every aspect of life. Sex is only a fraction of that, a direct, wild, raw, animalistic replica of what otherwise takes place in every domain of what we do. There is always arousal and there is always climax accompanied by sense of emptiness.
Well, the question I have, or the issue I'd like to ask you about, is that I know you've been doing yogic practices in the past, energetic practices, and if you could share a little bit, if that's not too private to ask, share a little bit about transmutation of sexual energy, which in the male is very expressive and seeking that outward movement out of the body. What I have been doing lately was circulating that energy throughout my body, but I'd like to ask you for your own experience in that matter and some recommendations that you could give for using that vital energy to empower, the energy centers in the body, and to use that energy for the higher purpose other than just procreation. So that's my question. Thank you.
So in other words, you want to dive at the deep end, right? That's straight from...
Well, yeah.
Are you coming tomorrow?
Unfortunately not. I have a flight. I have to go, out of Poland, so that's the only...
That's smart. That's why you're probably diving at the deep end.
So I'm going to ask you that question and leave Poland. No, but I'm really curious about your own experience, because, there's not too many people that had been through that yogic transmutation practices, and I've been to India so many times, and I've spoken to many teachers, and in India this is a type of a question that's a taboo question. No one really, I think because of the Indian culture probably, there's a lot of repression of that energy in males and females. So I thought, that's just something that comes out of my heart to ask you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I presume, since you have, as you have mentioned, and you said we spoke some 10 years ago, right? You might have come across some of the responses I've given over the years to maybe not exactly this kind of questions, but questions of sexuality and spirituality, questions of, let's say, down to how to manage one's sexual energies, and so you're probably familiar with some of this. And since we are now in the group, I feel it's very important that when we speak about this, it always serves as a great reminder that if you concretely want to understand this, then the first fundamental understanding is the nature of the Eros. And so, have you heard, you've been in India, so you know the myth of Shiva's encounter with an Eros, right? Kamadeva. You know the myth?
I know
Well, it's okay, because it's it's a part of the folklore. But let us maybe give it as an entrance point here. So, Kamadeva, right? The god of what that term stands here for, right? Kama, Deva. In fact, if we translate this as the god of pleasure, we'll do it injustice. See? So, Kama here is another term for love. Eros. Kamadeva is the god of Eros. Eros, in fact, in ancient Mediterranean mythology or ancient Greek mythology, that's what would be the equivalent. So Eros or Kamadeva had the cheek to shoot his arrow at Shiva while Shiva was meditating, just out of playful sport. And we know that whoever he shoots with his arrow is then, there and then, is given to the pangs of love, given to the agony of love, basically. That's the story. But of course, Shiva interjected that as a flash of a lightning and pulverized on the spot the god of love. Parvati, when she learned about this, she gone berserk, she gone wild. How dare you? Now, how can beings experience love? You killed a god of love. So Shiva would not bow, she would just like, well, tough, titty, he just like basically pushed his luck too far. It's like this, I'm not the god to play with, I'm one and the only. But Parvati would not have it either, right? So she really threw him a proper spouse tantrum. And even Shiva realized that he's in a pickle. So he had to do something about it. So he did not bring Kamadeva to life, but he allowed Kamadeva to exist, but only as a vapa. So this gives the brilliant and beautiful, evocative, poetic insight into the fiber out of which everything is made. So at the level of particles, we are made out of Eros. Everything is vibrating with that energy. So the first rule of thumb, if you want to be a tantrika, in a true sense of that, it's that realization needs to be made, that every experience is already erotic. Everything is steeped in that energy of Eros. Every attempt otherwise at localizing it and giving it to a specific area, let's say area which is restricted to sexual enjoyment through the organs and through the internal sense of arousal, would do injustice to that what here Eros represents. So it's actually the other way around. The way of the Tantrika is to, first of all, have this predisposition that everything is erotic to begin with, and build on that understanding. Build on that understanding. Then it produces a very subtle vibration in the mind. Because if the mind before was always gravitating towards how to magnify that pleasure, and in women much less so, but in many men that I have met throughout my life, this has been a formidable question and desire. How to, A, master that energy and utilize that energy so as to derive, and we can now begin to enumerate the benefits. You see, what can here be seen as that, because this energy is all there is. All there is. More explicitly now, for instance, in lieu of what somehow has been spoken in the last year, more emphatically perhaps with the publication of this book, my life work to the date, Eros here represents creative potential. Its ability to create. If you look at every creative being, really truly creative being, you cannot divorce, you cannot separate that force, that inherent power from their prose, from their creative prose. And a lack of that energy, or when that energy is diminished, in someone who likes to be creative, wants to be creative, always expresses itself in convoluted ways, in perturbed ways. And we can even say now, we can have this a leap in the conversation, why in our culture, for example, there are so many ways of how to enhance that by every nook and cranny, by everything that is available there, by constantly trying to maximize that. You see? It's paradoxical. It's again a sign of our day and age, sign of our culture. The more impotent we become, the more attempts are made to whip it. You see? Like the most kind of grotesque example is when, let's say, that energy becomes more appeased and takes different form, you have to take Viagra. So in other words, the expression is there. Sexual expression changes its form and wants to fountain itself in a different way. But no, you have to have a hard phallus down there to prove that you are a man. No? Does not concern you yet. But I'm already in that category of men. When they start getting gray and bald, they all like, yeah, like maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's where and that in itself is, of course, it's a joke. It's a reference point of a joke on our culture. You see? So in other words, you can't take a rest. You can't take a break. You have to, like a rabbit, constantly be horny and run around and, and do the F around. I promise not to sway, by the way. So F means, you know what it means. So that's what really, really first and fundamentally where we enter this kind of question. Like we want to understand this, like first from the entirety of that. Only then we can dive into the internal anatomy, into the alchemy of the process. You see? And then we are in for some interesting realizations, you see? Interesting that are there. So, whilst maybe the nature of your question has different layers, different kind of layers of interest, what you effectively asking is about the sublimation of energy. The sublimation of energy. And in practical terms, where your attention should be, because anything else, you can read it in the Tao Te Ching, more kind of practical literature. You can read that in Daoistic literature. The whole anatomy is much more precisely dealt with than in Tantra. Tantra is esoteric. Tantra, let's make it very, very clear here for everyone, for myself including. So it's an opportunity maybe to tweak this. Tantra utilizes only 12% of sexual actual exercises into the full scope of its body of work. Only 12% in terms of the rich body of work. And even those 12% are not aimed at enhancement of one's performance, capacity, or joy, or whatever that might be, as mistakenly has been drilled by some of the proponents of so-called tantric workshops going back to the time when Tantra still enjoyed this dirty reputation, both in India and in the West. Mostly because of this, somehow it gained this, couples workshops, like, yes, it has therapeutic application, no doubt about that. But the purpose was not that. Whereas in Daoism, there are practical exercises to simply enjoy healthy, raw, wild sex, to enhance one's performance. Do you see the difference? Of course, we can then go and maybe deepen this conversation that why would in Daoism this kind of approach be taken? And the reasons for that is because it's rooted in the very approaches. Everything that comes from India is much more esoteric. The very premise of Indian culture is such. Everything that originated somehow across the other side of the Himalayan plateaus are what we call today's China, is exoteric. Remember the famous line of Lao Tzu in the Book of Change? Remember that line? Know the father, stick to the mother. That's the very principle. See? So in other words, know who you are, know your spirit, know your provenance, know your awareness, but stick to the mother. Like live in nature, down to earth. So if you want to know these practices, and this is where you should go. You see? This is where you should go. I mean, I read it when I was in my early 30s. Did some practices even. Yeah, did some practices. Some of them are fabulous, others ridiculous, requires a lot of athleticism. And at the time I was very athletic. So it was all part and parcel. But shall I bring you one funny exercise? It will make you a better kisser. Yeah? Who wants to be a better kisser? We still have a lot of time, don't worry, we'll adjust ourselves as we go along. So you take a good orange, a good orange, right? Ripe, with beautiful, fragrant orange. You pierce it, like find a way to hang it so it hangs on a thread. Orange, okay? And then you start fingering it with your tongue. You start manipulating that orange with variety of tongue movements. It doesn't only make you a better kisser. It makes you also an excellent down in the lower department. Your partner will be basically in heaven from the level of what your tongue is able to do. And these are Daoistic exercises. It has so many therapeutic applications. You wouldn't believe it. One, it makes your breath fragrant to begin with. It's like you had a whole pack of chewing gum with orange flavor. I mean it. I'm not like, I know you 10 years ago, like, it's not that in my funny sense of humor. I'm being dead serious now. But what it does, it actually, the tongue is an extension of the organ. The whole sexual organ is like, it's completely, so the tongue and it's there. But what you're asking, you see, like this, the questions you ask. India is not at all prudish country. What? No, nonsense. Man, woman, no. India is not prudish country at all. The reason why people and teachers don't want to talk about it, there are many. There are many teachers who simply don't want to talk about it. What, can you ask that question in the satsang movement? You will be asked to leave. Well, not exactly, but like you'll be asked, can you make it into a more awareness-based question? So it's not just because somebody refuses to answer this question. So, rule of thumb, first of all, every experience is that. Every experience. So with that understanding, there is a portion of energy freed in the mind that allows this much subtler vibrations, even when you are engaged in the physical act, or if you are preparing for such. What you want to really know here is where to keep your awareness, not so much the exercises to do. You do the Reiki healing, pranic healing, you would be asked to do this rotation of energy anyway. This is how it's done, it's part and parcel of how you prepare before you are, as it were, bringing your structure, your system in a alignment with the possibility of doing the work, psychic work on someone. So this, making this into something useful, something really, really useful, is where the attention is, where the awareness is. And where is the awareness? Awareness should always be in between. This is the simplest but the greatest of all the secrets. You see? Your awareness should ideally remain at a point where the arousal itself takes place, and where also in your memory you know where awareness will be reposed after an act. In this case, an act of ejaculation, an act of orgasm with ejaculation, or an act of orgasm without ejaculation makes no difference, because it only makes difference in terms of the content of ojas lost or not. But what's important here is what happens at the level of your mind. That's the most important thing. What seeds are sown in your mind after each sexual encounter. You see? So therefore, in Tantra Loka, the emphasis is made on making the unwavering point of attention at the point where the arousal takes place and where the culmination takes place. These are esoterically represented by two qualities. You see? Two qualities. That of the fire and the sun and that of the moon. One is here representing ambrosia and another one poison. They need to be appeased. So your awareness placed on that already is what allows the possibility for the greatest enjoyment, for being in a state of flow and not sowing the seeds. In other words, not driving vasanas deep into your system in the form of what this act represents, because it's the greatest possible act which fortifies every attachment. You see? So if you want a secret, this is the greatest secret now shared with you. Now you can truly, you don't need to take a weekend workshop, you can carry it with you. But of course, it's easier said than done. You need to be able to have your awareness on that, what is represented here by ambrosia and by poison. And you know that at the level of, let's say, outside of it, we know that every arousal has the quality which makes us big in every way. Big. It swells us. It's soaring. It's uplifting. And the saturation, what is the end result of every such excitement, brings the poison. Always is accompanied by sense of, like contempt. This is why it's esoterically spoken of as ambrosia and poison. So this is where maybe you can begin to interpret some of the teachings of the greatest masters ever walked the earth. Why every experience is already at a given. is screwed, like Buddha was proposing. Everything we do is already doomed. That is Shuddha Dukkha. That is that, you see, but it's now Tantric perspective here. And understanding of that experience, also every arousal has the culmination in every aspect of life. Sex is only a fraction of that, a direct, wild, raw, animalistic replica of what otherwise takes place in every domain of what we do. There is always arousal and there is always climax accompanied by sense of emptiness. You achieve the great thing and immediately comes emptiness. Immediately. Emptiness. But not the emptiness in the sense of spiritual emptiness. It's we are emptied. We feel unsatisfied again. That's why, like you can be Elon Musk, you will never be satisfied. You can be 10 times Elon Musk, you can never be satisfied. The guy will never be satisfied. No matter what he does. Doesn't matter, rocket fell down now, this is not, these are peanuts, like the real sense of satisfaction is already not there because of the esoteric nature of this. That was only a metaphor that the recent rocket fell down. A very telling metaphor. If he was a little bit more spiritually oriented, he would have read into this clearly as nature is like, son, let me show you. That doesn't work like that. But no, there will be another rocket, trust me, soon launched. Nothing wrong with that. So, try this. See where it takes you. Whatever you can make out of it right now. But it's not so much in terms of where do you hold the breath. Yeah, of course it's all there. It's like, it's not also the position of your awareness on chakras. No, I wouldn't even worry about that. This is a true non-dual understanding. This is the creme de la creme. This is the teachings of the masters available today. This is. Awareness is always in between. If you keep your awareness in between, if you're aware of where the breath oscillates between, this is it. That's what enlightened experiences, what people who are in this state of flow, that's what is being experienced. It's what's in between. Because in the gap, everything is as it is. So